On March 15th, 2023, a quiet announcement sent shockwaves through the global financial system, even though almost no one noticed. Saudi Arabia revealed it would accept China's currency, the yuan, for oil sales to China, not dollars. Yuan. For nearly half a century, oil had been priced almost exclusively in US dollars. That arrangement, born in the 1970s, wasn't just about energy. It was the backbone of American financial dominance. And in that moment, a crack appeared. This wasn't a routine trade adjustment. It was a signal. One that history has seen before. Every global reserve currency follows a pattern. It rises, dominates, stretches itself too far, and eventually gives way to alternatives. It has happened again and again to empires that believed they were untouchable. Portugal learned this in the 1600s. The Netherlands learned it in the 1700s. Britain learned it in the 1900s. And now, the United States is walking the same path. Most people assume reserve currency status is permanent. It isn't. On average, it lasts about a century. The currency becomes trusted, then indispensable, then abused, until confidence slowly erodes, and the world moves on. We are now deep into that process. To understand why this matters, you first need to understand what a reserve currency actually is. A reserve currency is the money countries hold to trade with each other, repay debt, and stabilize their own economies. When one currency dominates global reserves, the issuing country gains enormous advantages. It creates constant demand. Other nations must acquire your currency just to function in global trade. It allows cheap borrowing, because the world is eager to hold your debt. It enables inflation to be exported abroad instead of felt fully at home. And most importantly, it allows a nation to exchange newly created money for real goods, energy, labor, resources produced elsewhere. This privilege is extraordinary, and losing it is devastating. History shows that dominance begins with real power. Portugal controlled global spice routes. The Dutch built the most advanced financial markets on Earth. Britain ruled the seas and global trade. The United States emerged from World War II with unmatched industrial capacity, military reach, and gold reserves. Trust followed power, but power invites overreach. Every reserve currency nation eventually spends more than it earns. It fights wars it can't afford. It borrows excessively, confident that demand for its currency will never fade. For a while, this works because alternatives don't yet exist, but eventually, competitors begin preparing. Rivals don't replace the dominant currency overnight. They build quietly. New trade routes, new banks, new payment systems, new alliances, not to overthrow the system immediately, but to protect themselves from it. That's exactly what's happening today. After the 2008 financial crisis exposed deep flaws in the Western financial system, countries began asking dangerous questions. What happens if access to the dollar is cut off? What if reserves are frozen? What if payment networks are weaponized? Those questions became reality in the 2010s. Sanctions, asset seizures, and financial exclusions sent a clear message to the world. The dollar was no longer neutral. It was a geopolitical tool. And once a reserve currency is used as a weapon, trust begins to crack. Russia responded by dumping dollar reserves and stockpiling gold. China built its own international payment system. Trade agreements increasingly bypassed the dollar entirely. What began as defensive moves slowly turned into structural alternatives. This is the critical transition phase, where confidence erodes quietly while the system still appears strong on the surface. Then comes the tipping point. Reserve currencies don't collapse when they're weak. They collapse when alternatives become practical, when enough countries decide that using something else is easier, safer, or cheaper. That's what makes the Saudi decision in 2023 so important. Oil is the bloodstream of global trade. When the world's largest exporter accepts payment outside the dollar system, it signals permission for everyone else to do the same. Once that signal is sent, momentum builds. Trade begins shifting. Reserve shares decline. Gold purchases accelerate. Parallel financial systems gain volume. Network effects start to reverse. The currency doesn't disappear, but it stops being dominant. History shows what happens next. As demand for the reserve currency falls, Borrowing costs rise. Governments can no longer finance deficits effortlessly. Inflation stops being exported and comes home. Living standards, inflated for decades by monetary privilege, begin to fall. This is not theory. Britain experienced it after World War II. Its global influence collapsed far faster than expected. The pound survived, but Britain's economic power never recovered. The United States now faces a similar crossroads, but under far more extreme conditions. America's debt is unprecedented. Its financial system is deeply interconnected with the rest of the world, and modern technology allows capital to move instantly. Previous reserve currency transitions took decades because money moved slowly. This one won't. When confidence breaks, it breaks everywhere at once. What replaces the dollar isn't yet clear. It could be a multipolar system where several currencies share influence. It could be a commodity-backed trade unit. It could be a mix of regional currencies and hard assets like gold. What's clear is that the era of absolute dominance is ending. And when it does, the consequences will be uneven. Nations with low debt and real assets will adapt. Commodity producers gain leverage. Gold holders historically benefit the most. Financial centers tied to the old system lose influence. And the country that once issued the reserve currency faces the hardest adjustment of all. This is why this moment matters. The decline doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds stage by stage, crisis by crisis. Most people don't recognize it until it's already advanced too far to reverse. The pattern has played out before the names change. The technologies change, but the cycle doesn't. The Portuguese real faded. The Dutch guilder faded. The British pound faded. And now, the dollar is entering the most dangerous phase of all, where alternatives stop being symbolic and start becoming dominant. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it rhymes. But it rhymes! And right now, the rhyme is getting louder.